Okay, everybody, quick show of hands. How many of you are members of the American Homebrewers Association? Okay, 1, 2, 3. For all of you without raised hands, make sure you join this awesome community of 46,000 homebrewers. In addition to providing great recipes and brewing resources, AHA members enjoy special deals and discounts at more than 1,800 breweries, brew pubs, and homebrew shops across the country. Learn more and join up at homebrewersassociation.org. That's homebrewersassociation.org. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, April 12th, 2018. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Sean Slape talks about Crisis Brewing, the new small-scale commercial brewery that he almost literally built himself from the ground up. Sean will tell us how he used his engineering background to design and build his two-barrel electric brewery and give us details on his beers, which are already popular right out of the starting gate. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows, our DVDs, our brewer's logbooks, and other Basic Brewing gear. And if you buy anything in our Basic Brewing store, basicbrewingshop.com, you can get free stickers from us as well. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook. We have a cool Basic Brewing app on iTunes and Amazon.com, and we're found all over the place where fine podcasts are served up. If you do us the favor of rating us on iTunes and maybe leaving a nice comment, they say that'll help new listeners to find us. And if you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/Basic Brewing. Well, Steve and I are planning to get together soon to shoot at least a couple Basic Brewing video episodes. Things have been pretty busy around here, so we haven't had a chance to get together. I've got some beers ready to talk about. I have my Instant Pot Rice Pilsner and my no-boil extract hop stand pale ale to talk about, along with my 30-minute hop stand rye pale ale that I just kegged a couple of days ago, so that should be ready here pretty soon. I'm happy with all three of those beers. All three of those beers were delicious. And by the way, I brewed all those beers with yeast from our sponsor, Imperial Organic Yeast. I've been really happy with every batch I've brewed with Imperial Yeast. They offer the highest cell count of any liquid yeast producer, 200 billion cells. Proper pitch rates are always easy to hit with Imperial. In fact, I've pretty much said goodbye to making starters for standard gravity 5-gallon batches. My stir plate is dusty. Imperial used to come in the little cans, but now you can find Imperial in nifty, easy-to-use pouches. They have top-notch customer service, and if you call Imperial with a question, you can actually talk to the human. And Imperial Yeast is based in Portland, Oregon, where HomebrewCon is going to be in June. So Imperial is hosting an Insane in the Yeast Strain kickoff party for HomebrewCon at the Imperial Bottle Shop on Wednesday, June 27th at 6 p.m. That's the Wednesday before the conference at the Imperial Bottle Shop. It's in collaboration with Everybody's Brewing out of White Salmon, Washington, and will feature 8 beers all brewed with the same base wort, but inoculated with 8 different yeast strains. So Steve and I are planning to be there, and we hope to see you there too. It's a non-ticketed event, so first come, first served. So thanks to Imperial Organic Yeast for their support of this podcast, and we look forward to seeing them in person. Let's take a look into the mailbag. Rich from Denver writes, I'm creating a SCOBY from a commercial kombucha, and I've been watching tons of videos about the process. I'm trying to figure out how to best carbonate after bottling. Many of the videos talk about burping the bottles daily to prevent bottle bombs, and many of the videos show gushers when opened. I was wondering about using Cooper's carb tabs in each bottle and then using flavor extract instead of real fruit, thinking that this might prevent overcarbonation. Do you think this might work? Well, I think that using extract instead of real fruit, non-fermentable extract would help as well. And if you use the proper amount of carb tabs to the amount of, kombucha in the bottle, that would probably work too. But I think if you have to burp the bottles every day, I don't think you're doing it right. I think you're playing Russian roulette. At some point, you're gonna lose track, or something's gonna happen, and one of those is gonna overpressurize and then blow up. When I made hopped kombucha for Basic Brewing Video last year, I waited until the kombucha was finished fermenting, or at least I thought it was finished, and then I dry hopped it, and then transferred to PET bottles, where I primed with table sugar. And I was using liter plastic bottles. So if you are using the 12-ounce bottles, the carbonation drops should work. The benefit of using the plastic bottles is that you can squeeze the bottles and tell when you're coming up to pressure. When they start getting tight, you know that there's stuff going on in there, and you need to pay attention. And once you get to the pressure level that you want, put them in the fridge, and that should slow the fermentation down. Because you don't know what's in that SCOBY. You don't know if it's, there's stuff in there, bacteria or yeast in there that's going to continue to work after you think it should be done. So it's the same approach as making non-alcoholic root beer for the kids. The old way of doing things is you put yeast in this sugary drink at bottling time, and then when the root beer is carbonated, you put them in the fridge. You chill them down. Otherwise, you will have bottle bombs because the yeast will continue to eat that sugar. So, of course, alternately, you can always keg your kombucha and force carbonate it that way with CO2, and that way you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Now let's talk about our sponsors, Desiree and Dave from High Gravity in Tulsa. I took a beer camping, not a beer camping trip, but I took a beer while I was camping that I made on my high-gravity electric brew-in-a-bag system with the Warthog controller, and my non-homebrewing friends went crazy about it. It's my no-boil extract hop stand pale ale that I didn't boil it. I just mixed the extract in the water as it was warming up and brought it up to 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 71 C and held it there for 30 minutes and then added my hops, as I would for a hop stand at that point. And it was super easy with the high-gravity system because I could just dial in the temperature into the Warthog controller in the mash mode, and, it came up to 160 and it just stayed there. I didn't have to worry about it wavering off of that set point. So again, for that brew, I just used the mash mode. But normally, after mashing, I'd switch over to the boil mode. And with the Warthog controller, the boil mode, you can adjust the power level precisely, percentage-wise on the little digital readout there. So very handy. And worry-free. I don't know if it's worry-free because I worry about everything, but it sure has reduced my worries over propane. It sure has taken the pain out of propane for me. Electric homebrewing is the wave of the future, and High Gravity has you covered with a variety of turnkey systems from 5 gallons up to 2 barrels and several Warthog controllers to choose from if you're building your own. If you already have components or if you're cobbling together your own system. And by the way, about that beer that I made and took camping, I grilled my friends my non-beer geek friends about what they liked about that no-boil pale ale. And the best they could do was say, I don't know, it just tastes good. Leave me alone. Quit grilling me. I don't know. I'm not a super taster. But then they'd ask for another. So, I know that they liked it. They just didn't know why. So anyway, check out all the great electric brewing gear at family-owned and operated highgravitybrew.com and use the code EBC75BB to save $75 off your electric gear purchase. That's at highgravitybrew.com. Okay, Crisis Brewing is the latest entry into the growing craft beer scene in Fayetteville and Northwest Arkansas. And Sean Slape has an engineering background and is very handy in designing and building things, and I'm very jealous of those skills. Sean has built a brand-new, small-scale brewery that is already getting a lot of attention from the beer-loving public. Sean Slape, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We're here at Crisis Brewing in Fayetteville, Arkansas, the house that Sean built.
I think that is very kind of you to say so. It was a lot of work, but the house was here before. I just needed to do a little remodeling.
So first of all, talk about this place. We're in the tasting room, and we had a tour. I had a tour of the brewing area, but this is really snazzy. It is, and I took pictures. I'll put them on Instagram and such. But tell us about this structure. You were saying that you have an engineering background, and you said to me, if you could see it, you did it.
Yeah, that is correct. So what the structure was originally the old Arkansas Traveler Barbecue building, and I don't know if you're familiar with Fayetteville. It used to sit on College Avenue, I guess kind of where near the Boca restaurant is now. And it was set over here probably 20 plus years ago, and then it became a storage shed for my father-in-law's stuff. Over time, he used that, to put stuff for work, his personal stuff, and it just was being used as a storage shed. And as we moved back to Fayetteville, we got a chance to realize the fact that I could make beer for a living and we needed a place to do it. So we decided to turn an old storage shed into a brewery and a tap room.
And your father-in-law, correct me if I'm wrong, he runs a chain of local barbecue restaurants. So one is right across the parking lot here.
That's correct. My father-in-law, Ed Knight, Penguin Ed.
Delicious barbecue, by the way. Free plug.
Fantastic barbecue. I do eat it a lot.
Well, you can't tell. You're a fit man, and probably because of building this building.
Well, there's that, and I know that because I drink beer, I've got to exercise. Otherwise, it will pile on.
So when did you first have a love of craft beer and home brewing, and give us some history?
Well, I probably started about 10 or 12 years ago. My cousin, who's in Kansas City, started doing some craft beer kits from Northern Brewer. And I was up at his house one day. He said, try some of my homebrew beer. Tell me what you think of it. I thought it was fantastic. It was actually a Fat Tire clone from the Northern Brewer kit. And, I was like, well, this is pretty good stuff. And my background at the time was doing industrial making ethanol on an industrial scale. So fermentation was kind of, right up my alley. And I thought, well, he said it was easy. I thought I'd give it a go. And I liked the idea that I could start making beers the way I wanted them to taste instead of the way that they taste when I bought them.
And so how long before you broke out of the kits?
It was probably about 1.5 years, 2 years of brewing extract, just because it was quick and easy at the time. And after I'd gone through a bunch of extract kits, all the ones I liked, I figured it was time to do something new. It was kind of, I'll say it gently, it was kind of getting boring doing extract brewing at the time, and I thought all grain would be just a new interesting twist to the making process. And again, it allowed you to have a little bit more control over the flavor of the beer, and it just, I liked the idea of sitting down, planning my brew day, getting everything ready. The next day, it was kind of a, cathartic is maybe a little strong, but it was a nice way to spend an afternoon. It was relaxing, and I just enjoyed the process from start to finish with the grain, all grain brewing, much more so than the extract. I know it's not significantly different, but it just seemed like it was, more of a process and more satisfying when I got to the end.
Oh, yeah, you can definitely make some delicious beers from extract, but if you're a control freak and you enjoy the process of making things and engineering things, all grain is definitely the way to go.
For sure. And, I wouldn't, I would go back to extract brewing if I needed to. It wasn't something, that it didn't make great beers. It was just I got a little bit more out of the all grain.
So when did you get the spark for this place, and what was the process? We're talking about process. What was the process of creating Crisis Brewing?
Yeah. Well, the spark probably came in college, to be honest. People started talking about brewing beer all the time in the chemical engineering department, like that would be some kind of dream job. And this was in the early 90s, and the craft beer scene was really, in its early infancy. So that was more of a, just the kind of things that you guys say when you're drinking beer together. And, and it kind of faded after that. And I, finished school, got a job in industry, worked for years, and then about the time I started doing, like I said earlier with my cousin, he served some craft beer to me, his homemade craft beer, and I was like, well, this sure has come a long way. And I was thinking that, still, I remember once upon a time I thought that would be a cool thing to do, but it just kind of, it passed again, and it just became a hobby for a while because I did have a full-time job. And then over the years, the craft brew scene just continued to boom. I moved away to Chicago and then to Denver, and there was a lot of craft beer drinking there. Really got into it a lot. Thought it was, just a fantastic way to do things. Talked to a lot of brewers as well. It's just some of the nicest group of people you can meet, and I started thinking about, these guys have a pretty nice life, and I sure, that being part of that wouldn't be the most terrible thing in the world. So, and that was a thought, and then I continued to work, my regular day job, and then after a while, I decided that I was going to quit my day job, help my brother-in-law with a business in Denver, Colorado, and just get used to, the small business aspect of a job. And after, probably a year and a half of doing that with him, working with him was fantastic, but residential construction, I didn't really care a whole lot for it. Homeowners can be a finicky group of people, and it was probably more than I really wanted to deal with. So at that point in time, I said to myself, let's just go back to biofuels engineering, and we can get away from this small business aspect, and I can just, I can drink beer, brew beer, and, just enjoy my life. But as a result, right about that time I decided to do that, petroleum started crashing. And as petroleum falls, the demand for biofuels also falls, ironically. As petroleum gets cheaper, gas gets cheaper. Therefore, in relative terms, biofuels get more expensive, so the investment in biofuels goes down. And everybody says they want renewable energy, but when gas is $1.50 a gallon, everybody's more than happy to pay for gas, and I understand it. So it was difficult to find a job in the biofuels engineering field, and I didn't want to go into any other area of engineering. So we were sitting at home one day, it was snowing in Colorado, and we were just talking about, how finding a job has been way tougher than I thought it would be. I was in my, creeping up on my mid-40s, and me and my wife were just laughing about how, it's just crisis after crisis, and we're like, yeah, that's great. She said something about, well, maybe you should start homebrewing again and maybe take it to, the next scale. You wanted to do the small business with your brother-in-law, so you like that aspect of it. You love homebrewing. And she said, so we could just call it Crisis Brewing. And it took about 2 seconds to land on that name. It fit perfect everywhere. So we took it, went with it, and started making the plans to open a small brewery. But as it turns out in Denver, unless you've got pockets that are miles deep and, pretty much more money than you know what to do with, very difficult to get started. Barriers of entry are high. Everybody makes fantastic beer out there, so that's not going to differentiate you. Your location, your tap room, those are the kind of things that kind of get you to stand out. Because like I said, the craft beer scene there is phenomenal, and there's something for everybody. And as Denver is exploding, property is expensive, leases are expensive, so we knew that it probably wouldn't be realistic to start there. And we had talked about, working our way back to Fayetteville. We had been gone for about 5 years because, I was born and raised here. My wife was raised here also. Her family is here. My dad's here. My grandmother's here. So Ed, kind of encouraged us, said, hey, we might have a place that you could use if you were interested in doing it. Oh. And we decided to go ahead and take another leap and move back to Fayetteville and get this thing going.
Wow. Everything aligns, and your experience in residential construction has apparently come in handy.
Working with my brother-in-law made a big difference. Knowing that construction, on the surface you think it's pretty straightforward, but there's a lot of detail to it, and unless you're doing it on a day-by-day basis, you don't understand, the level of skill that's involved in it. And it was nice to get that from him. Working alongside him was great, and it allowed me to bring this to bear. I had my time. I didn't have a ton of money, but I do have a lot of time, and I could use that.
And sweat equity is the thing that counts a lot.
It does count a lot, and it makes a big difference. It made it possible, is what it did.
Well, I'm finishing off the first of 5 beers here, sample, and this is the Cream Ale. So talk about this beer.
So the Cream Ale is the beer that I brewed for the people that, kind of state that they don't like craft beer, or maybe that the craft beer is a little too strong for them. And I wanted a beer that was approachable, but did have a little bit more flavor than your average Pilsner beer. I mean, you target the people that typically like Budweiser, Bud Light, that kind of thing, and you make it a little bit better of a beer, at least from let's see, what's the word?
Make it more interesting.
Make it more interesting. You give it a little bit more character. I know that Budweiser, those beers, it's impressive that those guys can turn out the same beer on such a scale. The technology is amazing. That's impressive alone. Not a big fan of the no flavor beer, so I could make something that was similar, that had a lot more flavor, that would lead people into the next level. Maybe a light Irish ale or a brown ale, and then they could start pushing into perhaps a hoppy pale ale, IPA, and just kind of start to explore it from that starting point.
This is nice. It's as cream ales are supposed to be. It's Pilsner-esque. But at the same time, it's got you can on the grain side you can taste the grain. It's got a nice malt backbone. It's not a hop bomb. It's not supposed to be, and it's a teeny bit more fruity than your typical European style lager. Sure. But it's very drinkable and delicious. So talk about the recipe.
So exactly like you said, I was targeting, it's a Pilsner-esque type beer. I wanted to use, it's essentially a smash with some corn in it. It's Pilsner malt, Saaz hops, and a little corn for the body and a little extra sweetness. And then I blended some lager yeast and some ale yeast together and fermented at lower ale temperature and a higher lager temperature. That took a little longer to hit the final gravity as expected, and then once we harvested the yeast, we went ahead and lagered at about 32 for about 2 weeks, just to kind of get that crispness and kind of clarity out of the beer, because nothing's filtered here. So we're going for the ale lager too, all at the same time. Lagering is difficult here on such a small system. The capacity is always an issue, so I wanted to get as close as I could without having to feel all the pain of an 8-week lager.
Well, it's nice and clear. The clarity is just fine. Talk about your system. I mean, I took some pictures for the social media. Sure. But this is a system that I'm sure there are home brewers that have something similar at their house on that scale. But talk about how it's put together.
So it's a 2-barrel system from Stout Tanks. It's an all electric system. The hot liquor tank and the kettle both have 3 550-watt elements in it, so we needed to push the electrical capacity of this place just to run those. It is, for all intents and purposes, a scaled-up homebrew system. I mean, we haven't pushed into the realm of, I'd say commercial brew systems. I would say, once you push up to 3.5 or 5, that's where things start to get, look a little different than the homebrew. These just look like giant homebrew kettles is what they look like. And so anybody that, homebrews on an electric Herm system or a REM system would be familiar with this process. So, it's a Herms system. There's about 75 to 100 foot of stainless, half-inch stainless coil in there. I use it to, most of the time, but I've noticed that for whatever reason, the system holds on to a lot of heat. So the HERM system has been used mostly just for, recirculation. So it does provide quite a bit of clarity during the mash. I get pretty high efficiencies with that system, and I turn it off, really, until I mash out. So when I first started brewing with it, just like anybody does, you got to get used to your equipment. I would run it constantly and notice that there was a lot of thermal mass there, so the lag times from your set point temp to actually hitting target temp were a little low. So I did go back to this tried and true method of, getting your strike water temperature correct. Based on my system, I know what that is. It hits it almost perfectly every time now. Recirculate for clarity, shut it down, and then until I mash out, I don't turn the thing back on again.
And so, I don't know what your homebrew system was like, but does electricity stand up to propane or whatever you were using before?
Well, my homebrew system's also electric. It's almost an identical. It's the same setup. It's a HERM setup. I only have one element per hot liquor tank and kettle. It does seem to work a little bit better, to be honest, from a temperature control standpoint. It hits set points a lot faster, so step mashing is really easy on the homebrew scale. Here, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to do within any reasonable amount of time. So I scaled based on my homebrew system. I had used that. I've got 20-gallon kettles. I brew 10-gallon batches at a time, and I've used that to develop or fine-tune most of my recipes so that when I step up to this 2-barrel system, there hadn't been a lot of tweaking, to be honest. It's scaled quite nicely. So it's the amount of work that I've had to put in to tune my recipe from the 10-gallon batch to the 65-gallon batch has been surprisingly low.
And for a startup of your size, were there advantages to going electric as opposed to steam or natural gas or other alternative sources?
Yeah, sure. The first thing is this place didn't have natural gas pipe to it, so it was electric only. And it was, a lot of things come down to cost and time, and it was easy to upgrade the electrical system. Having a gas system, I would need to vent it, which is, I'd have to vent the gases. Right now, I have a vent for condensate steam, and that's all I need. Having a steam jacketed system, adding the additional complexity of a boiler didn't seem like it made much sense, as well as the simple fact of the matter is, you're looking at 350 square feet of total brew space. There's really nowhere to put it. So, the electricity just kind of picked itself in that regard.
Now I'm drinking the red ale, or the Irish ale, right? The Irish red ale.
Yes.
I was right on both counts. And I was talking before that this beer is nice and malty and roasty, and I could have sworn that there was a little smoked malt in there.
Yep, no smoked malts. We just got some chocolate and some roasted barley to add, that kind of richer, deeper flavor. And the roasted barley may pull out some of that, smoky flavor if you're, if that's what you're tuned to. But absolutely no smoked malts in the beer or in the malt bill.
And I say that as a positive thing, not
Right.
Smoky, not like astringent and
just the overall flavor of the beer.
Right. It's just a nice smoky, and we were postulating, before we started talking, and maybe that's an interaction between the roasted malts and the yeast.
Potentially, and that's something that would be, kind of fun over time to figure out. As a small craft brew place, I'm interested. I've got the recipes, and I have no problems tweaking things. In fact, that's what I want to do, so that you're drinking an Irish red, and you expect something when you come in, and it may be different the next time you drink the Irish red. And I think that's kind of the interesting part about a place of this size, that it allows you to do little small changes to the beer and still maintain a high quality beer, but just give you can provide a lot of variety with a little bit of change here.
And what is the yeast that you used?
So it is the Irish ale yeast from White Labs.
Okay. It's nice.
Yeah.
And again, very drinkable. For again, if you want to step up from the cream ale to something a little more challenging, so to speak, it's nice. Sean's locking the door, making sure you're not in business today. So going on to talk about your system. Talk about the cold side.
So the cold side, I went ahead and found some food grade plastic conical fermenters that were UV resistant. It was driven solely by the fact that I knew how to retrofit them, and solely. So there's dually, I guess, cost as well. They were, after I had retrofitted these fermenters with racking arms, the bottom ports, thermocouple ports, sample ports, blow-off arms, I was in about $750. If I was purchasing a jacketed conical of the same size, I'd have probably been pushing $4,000 plus. So that's a $16,000 cost that I absorbed, for about $3,000. And the beer, as long as you take care of those fermenters, they'll take care of you. So it was a whole lot. It was a cost time issue as well, but mostly cost. And I had done that for years in an industrial platform, so it wasn't difficult for me to do.
And you've got a glycol system that you plumbed yourself, you said, and but yet these aren't glycol jacketed fermenters. So how does that work?
They are not. So we have taken some food grade stainless steel, half inch stainless steel tubing, bent it around a sixtel keg, and connected it to the glycol system through hydraulic quick disconnects. So we have the coil submerged inside the fermenter, so it's in indirect contact with the liquid inside the fermenter.
So it's an immersion chiller, essentially.
It's essentially an immersion chiller. Yes, it is incredibly robust as far as temperature control is concerned. It's quite amazing. I can control down to about 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit with this system.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you come up with that solution, or does it exist out there?
Well, I came up with it. It probably did exist if I took the time to find it. I just I just needed to get it done, so I thought we can take some stainless steel, make a coil, and fit it in the hole on the top of that fermenter and go.
And they're all your fermenters are on wheels as well, so that makes it portable and easy to clean under. And
it does make it. As it probably every brewer is, I'm a freak about cleanliness, and that just made things a lot simpler to keep things clean. It also allows me to add more, push the fermenters over and add more if necessary.
And you had your soft opening last week, right? And you were just, this is a fairly small tasting room, fairly small space. How'd that go?
So it went much better than expected. The turnout was incredible. It made you feel really welcome. Very lucky that you're in a place like this to see something like that happen. It was hard to take in at first because you're moving so fast. The place was so full that all you could do is work. But when I had time to settle down at home Thursday night, I couldn't believe how fortunate we were for something like that to happen. The soft opening was, it was intentionally supposed to be soft so that we could, maybe start looking at what kinks this place would throw at us, solve them, let people come in, relax, and if, there was a problem with their tab, we could fix it without any hassle, and just work this system and figure out how to use the taproom side. But it turned out we figured it out. It was just a trial by fire, and I don't think we got burned.
Learn how to swim. Here's the ocean.
That's correct. So it was great. I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, it was pretty exciting, I have to say, seeing all these people come through the door. You never know what to expect, and then as it just continued to, fill up, it just makes you feel great.
And so when I walked in today, you said you were in the midst of filling your brew kettle, and you said you got some catching up to do.
I do. I mean, I thought, but I'm a plan for good scenarios, bad scenarios, and I thought I landed somewhere in between when I was building my inventory. And every expectation we had about sales was far exceeded, and since sales are beer, the beer's going away fast. So we got our IPA was an incredibly big seller. More so, I knew IPAs sell well, and I planned on it being the one that would probably sell the most, but we got rid of 3/4 of the IPA in 3 days. So. I expected to have 3 weeks worth of beer on tap, even being somewhat busy, but this just pushed it beyond anything I could have expected. So, I guess it's a fantastic problem to have, and I keep hoping that that's a problem that I have in the future.
Well, you've got more room. You've got room for more fermenters back there, and you said that you're going to get bigger fermenters, and you're going to start doing double batches. So already you're expanding. You haven't even opened yet.
4 days in, yes, and already looking to expand. And some of the brewers I had talked to before we got open, when I was talking about system capacity, they were immediate, like, just make it bigger than you expect. And I thought I did. I really thought I did. But I did still plan, just in case I was wrong. I left some space for a couple more to expand, and right now we're capable of making about 150 barrels a year of beer, and I can expand that to about 450 barrels a year by pushing the fermenter, the number of fermenters and the size of the fermenters up. So we'll see how that shakes out. The walk-in cooler is not sized for 450 barrels a year, but those are problems that you can solve. So
refrigerated trailers outside.
Well, it could happen. Definitely. As currently, we use that as clean keg storage space, and it's probably going to have to be used for full keg storage space now.
Well, we love our good beer here in Northwest Arkansas. And speaking of which, I'm sampling the IPA, and it is delicious as well. It's nice and clean. All these beers are clean. The hop presence is in your face, but yet it's not a bitter bomb, in my opinion. There's a nice malt backbone to go along with it. There's some tropical fruits and grapefruity and piney and all the good stuff that a nice solid IPA brings to it. So talk about your recipe.
So I like a little maltier IPA than normal, and I tried to bring that to this beer. And as a result, it does need some more hop to ease out the sweetness of that beer. And I am a big fan of the floral, the very aromatic IPAs as well, and using the Nugget, Mosaic, and Citra hops, the flavors are so complementary, and I think the Nugget provides a really smooth bitterness to the beer, but it also imparts that tropical, that citrusy type flavor that complements the citrus and Mosaic. So it gives you an IPA that I think is really well balanced with the malt and the hop, and it gives you just a in your face aroma that makes you think that, man, this smells so good, it's gotta taste good.
Yeah, it's like, I want to say it's like drinking candy, but that gives the wrong impression. It's not that sweet. It's my kind of candy where it's like, it's so delicious that it makes you want another one. It's 7.1% ABV, which is fairly it's up there. But what's the finishing gravity? Do you remember?
We finished about 10.9. So it was high to begin with.
Well, that's lower than I expected, because it's got a substantial body to it.
It does have. So it was I mashed in pretty warm, and so I like that. I think it does provide the body to the beer. It keeps those dextrins in solution, so that with the caramel malt that I put in there with the high mash temperature, it provides a body that you wouldn't expect from the beer.
Yeah, it's really nice. And so should I go to the double IPA next or the milk stout?
Well, if you want to not taste the milk stout, you can go to the double IPA.
Maybe we'll take a detour to the dark here. So talk about the milk stout.
So the milk stout, so I'm a big stout fan, and we'll be brewing a lot more stouts here. I like the dry stouts, I like the sweet stouts, I like flavored stouts. I'm a big stout fan. Good friend of mine that lives in Denver, me and him like to visit the Vine Street Brewery during Stout Month, and we just sample everything that they can put out. So I'm a fan of the bourbon barrel stouts, coffee stouts, coconut, anything that we can throw at it. I'm gonna be pushing that a lot. So I wanted the first stout that came through here to be a real easy drinking beer, so that people understand, like, okay, this guy is making reasonably decent beer, so if I see something crazy, maybe I'll give it a try, and with the expectation that it might be all right, So I put lactose and oats in there to give it that nice mouthfeel, and of course, anytime you put something on nitro that's a dark roasty beer, it's gonna make it good. So,
and still, it could be. I went camping this past weekend, and so maybe it was 2 days of standing around the campfire. Maybe that's still in my nose, but it's nice and roasty, but it tasted a little bit smoky to me. So what can you give a profile of your grain bill? Or
so we've got pale ale, we've got some Maris-Otter, we've got chocolate malt, roasted barley, and that's also in the Irish Red, and I'm thinking that you may be getting that from the roasted barley, because we've used two different yeasts for the red and for the stout, so I wouldn't expect the interaction to be coming from that, not to say that it isn't, but it seems the consistency between those two beers that provide you that smoky flavor would be the roasted barley is what I would look for.
Whose roasted barley do you use?
I use Breeze. So they just their stuff is it's fresh every time I get it. It's good quality stuff, and when I find something that works, I like to stick with it.
And this is a milk stout that a lot of milk stouts are like drinking a milkshake, which can be very good. Yeah. But this is not like that. It is creamy, but at the same time, it's balanced by a bit of hops and the roastiness, and so to me, it's more palatable than say just a sort of a milkshakey milk stout.
Sure, so although a milk stout kind of insinuates that you would be drinking something thick and big, really kind of sweet. It definitely has a sweetness to it from the non-fermentable lactose, but I like it's also kind of got a dry, clean, easy body to it that makes it, really, really approachable stout for people that aren't big stout drinkers.
My wife would really like that one. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the double IPA. You already have, if I believe I've read accounts online that you already have plans to build a new location.
Well, we put the plans in place. Originally, when we talked about making a brewery here in Northwest Arkansas, the idea was, we like the hills of Fayetteville. We're from Fayetteville. When you leave town and you come back, you realize what a beautiful place this is. When I lived here, I knew how lucky we were, but it really brings it into focus when you leave and come back. And the idea, we wanted to make a cool neighborhood brewery and take advantage of the topography of this area around here, and sitting on the side of the hill looking over the south facing Fayetteville, staring at the hills, would just be beautiful. Realities of the situation were that it was going to take a while to put something like that together, and I wanted to get brewing beer. So this place is kind of, this is how we got the first step, but we don't want to lose sight of the fact that that's what we really wanted to do to begin with. So we put everything in place. We've been continuing with the process. We had, the drawings done, the architecture work, the engineering work done, the site selection, everything put together, went in front of the City Planning Commission, got everything taken care of so that when we were ready to pull the trigger, we could pull the trigger. It wouldn't be another, 6 months worth of engineering work, city planning, the commission back and forth, things just take time. So I figured it would be worth getting it lined out, get this place running, let people see what they think about the beer. Is it something they like? The reality is, if we built this place and nobody showed up, building the big building would be foolish. Right. So we want to take, easy steps to make sure that we have a successful, sustainable business and keep it, on a scale that makes it, we still want a really comfortable neighborhood location, and we want to bring the everybody that's in this area to that place and make it feel like that's something, some place that they'd like to be. And hopefully this is, the first taste of that, and we can do something that's even better over there.
So it's not going to be next week that you're going to break ground?
Definitely won't be next week. Next week is just brewing beer right now. There are, it's right now I've got to make sure that we can maintain the stock here to keep all the people that are coming in and enjoying the beer happy. That's what I care about.
So how big do you want to go?
So we are looking at either a 7 or a 10 barrel system. Okay. I'm cognizant of the fact that breweries can grow outside of their means very quickly, and I want to make sure that we are taking a measured, structured approach to the upgrade of this place. I don't want to be in a position where I'm, 5 years from now, we had a great run and then we're shutting things down because we expanded too fast, too much, took on a whole bunch of, extra hassle that weighed us down, and
had to bring in outside investors and all that stuff.
Right now, that is not, as far as we're concerned, that's not going to happen. We're going to be it's going to be family owned. We're going to do it ourselves, and if we have to go outside like that, the idea is to not do it. Of course, there's always the realities of the situation, but we like the control, and having 5 different people trying to point in 5 different directions is tough. And even if you have 5 different people mostly pointing in the same direction, it's tough. So we me and my wife think alike. Me and my in-laws think alike. So I think that we can do that and not have problems.
Well, and not everybody has to be Budweiser. Not everybody has to be Sierra Nevada even, or New Belgium. The thing about, and I've said it many times on the show, the thing I like about the Northwest Arkansas and Arkansas beer scene is that you've got all these different breweries and they're filling all these different niches. So, you've got your neighborhood brewery, you've got your kind of, citywide brewery, you've got these breweries that are going regional or statewide, and whatever makes you happy. It's like, Penguin Ed's across the parking lot. That's that's the state of Arkansas is not covered with Penguin Ed's. The region is not covered with Penguin Ed's, at least not yet. I don't know anything, but but you know what I mean. You can be happy being successful in the niche that you carve out.
Yes, that's the thing. Being happy with what you got is what we're after, and we're not trying to push all over Northwest Arkansas is big enough for us. This is our home. This is what we want to do. We want to, provide to the people of the area, and that's enough to make a good business, make an honest living, and maintain a quality of life, a balance of work-life balance that makes everything it makes it why you did it.
Right.
It keeps you happy, keeps you motivated, not burned out, and lets you talk. Lets you talk to the neighbors. It lets you enjoy your free time, lets you spend time with your family, and it just kind of ticks every single box. And going big seems like it's more hassle than it's worth, and I don't think we have any desire to get into that.
Speaking of things that make me happy, this double IPA is delicious. And cheers, by the way.
Cheers. Yes, thank you.
Pardon me while I just smell it while you talk about it.
Well, the double IPA. So I like I said earlier, I'm a big stout fan, but you'd be crazy not to be an IPA fan these days with all the good IPAs that are out there. And I wanted to make something that was big and strong and bitter and just in your face, but still not the kind that after you drink it, it's all you can do to swallow it because it's so bitter it hurts. And that's that. At one point in time, I guess I liked that. I like to see how hard you could push it. Lagunitas Hop Stupid is just a bomb beer, and I really loved it. But it's the kind of beer that makes you want to drink it again and again. But it's huge. It's huge. And I wanted to go something like that was incredibly big, incredibly hoppy, but just not offensive unless you're just not a hophead.
Well, it's 9.3% ABV. You listed as 119 IBUs. I assume that's calculated.
It's all calculated. I can't. I don't have the lab set up to go in and start measuring the isoalpha acids in there. It is certainly calculated, and as you're aware, you hear most 100 IBUs plus is probably about all the human palate can distinguish. So that's more of a that's theory. It's you go ahead and I agree with the math. I don't the biology may not stand up to that.
It looks good on the menu.
Yes.
So talk about the recipe. This is delicious.
So it's very similar to the Identity IPA, but I switched up the hops. I liked using the Columbus, and the Simcoe, the Centennial. I just like the piney kind of resiny type flavor that comes out of that, as opposed to the floral type citrus side of things. And the Columbus hop I think gives just a great bitterness as it finishes. So that had to be if you're going to go big when it's strong and bitter, at least when you finish your beer, it needs to not be killing you, in the end. And I think that hop provides that.
And it's not too sweet. And I noticed on the menu that you add corn sugar, a la Vinnie Cilurzo, to dry it out a little bit, but it's not too dry. It's nicely balanced.
So there's some caramel malt in there, and that is one of the it's a big malt bill, and one of the reasons we put the sugar in there is to dry it out a little bit. And that extra alcohol, that little bite, blends well with the bitterness of the hop to kind of smooth things, on the finish there, and it does it well.
Yeah, it's not a bitter bomb. No. Even though it's a double IPA, it's not a bitter bomb. I don't know whether, and I'm not going to mention the phrase that my wife usually mentions when she's talking about bitter beers. I'll tell you after, but I always get email when I do. But there's not that bitterness at the back of the throat kind of a thing going on. It's nicely drinkable, dangerously drinkable, and I'm only having a little sample.
Hence the existential. It's dangerously drinkable. So you have a couple of those, and you start thinking about what it all means.
It's contemplative. Yes. So what's the key to brewing a big old beer like that? What have you got to pay attention to maintain healthy fermentation and to have it? This is very cleanly fermented. You can tell that you paid a lot of attention to it. What are the keys that you need to check off as you're brewing this beer?
Well, I think the simplest key is you're going to need to match your yeast population to your sugar count. That's where you keep your beer the cleanest. You manage your sanitation just like everybody else does. Like I mentioned earlier, I have tight temperature control on fermentation. It allows me to kind of move things up and down to clean up the beer, and then pitching the proper pitch rate makes all the difference in the world, not just to this beer, but to every beer that I brew. So I spend a small, a good portion of the brew dedicated to ensuring that the yeast health is optimum, the pitch rates are optimum, and it's not difficult. It adds a little extra time, but it really pays off in the final product.
Amen, brother. These are good beers, and I'm glad to have a brewery closer to my house in Prairie Grove than I guess West Mountain is closer than you are, but it's nice to have you sort of in the neighborhood.
Yes, it's nice to be here. West Mountain was my watering hole, still kind of is my watering hole. I mean, after you drink your own beer for a while, you like drinking somebody else's beer, and Jesse's making fantastic beer up there. So that's where I go when I'm not so busy that I can leave this place. I spend my beer drinking time Thursdays, Fridays up there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the hospitality. Thank you for pausing your brew schedule here today for talking. I will be back. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, thanks again to Sean. I will definitely be back, and I can see myself getting some barbecue from across the parking lot and sipping on an IPA or two at Crisis. It's a great time to be a beer lover in Northwest Arkansas and across the country, for that matter. Things are going good as far as beer is concerned. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check all that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store, too. You can find our logbooks where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all that out and get some free stickers with every order at basicbrewingshop.com. Don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. So until next time, until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dutson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.